Oftentimes in StarMazer, we're going to want to have the game content react to the player action. It's one thing to be able to set up a specific sequence of events to happen, but it's another for the game to react to something the player has done in the past. So we're going to set that up right now. In our sample example, we have it so that when Brick looks at Slimo, the two characters say some lines. We want to make it so that when Brick looks at Slimo a second time, we're going to have a completely new sequence play. To do this, we need to use conditions. Now we already have a couple of conditions set up. We have the look condition and the current level condition. These are conditions that are baked into the game that reference code that is written in the game engine. But in this case, what we want to do is have a custom condition that will respond once the player has done this very specific sequence. So we're going to need to create a condition to do that. To create a condition, you can go to the Mazer Maker Windows Condition Builder window to go ahead and bring up a condition builder. I'm going to dock it right here next to the object editor. Now this condition builder window not only allows us to create new conditions, but edit current ones. I'm looking at the none condition. Let's take a look at a condition that we've already been using, the look condition. We have various properties that we can edit, and we'll go ahead and take a look at these properties when we create our own condition. So let's do that right now. So I'm going to create a new condition. Wiki demo, Brick has looked at Slimo. And after I've named it, I go ahead and hit this plus button, and it will create that condition and go ahead and select it for us. Now I can edit the condition name in case I want to give it a more descriptive name, or if the purpose of the condition changes that I might need to indicate that. And that's where you can adjust it right here. The value type is what value it allows us to input when we're checking the condition in a trigger. For example, this look command allows us to select any Mazer object. So if I selected value type and go down to Mazer object, it would make it so that that's the only type of condition we can select. And you can confirm that by looking at the default value, because it allows you to input a value only of that type. So because we've selected Mazer object, I can go ahead and select any Mazer object. In the case of this condition, the value of a Mazer object doesn't make sense. Instead, we want this to be true false. If you're interested in what any of these other value types do, you can go ahead and look at that information on the wiki. As I select true false, the default value changes to only allow me to select whether true or false, unchecked for false and checked for true. In this case, we want to start it off as false because we want to make sure that the player hasn't looked at Slimo as soon as the game starts, or at least we don't think the player has. We only want this to be true when the player has taken that action. Now initialize of null is a very important condition. This makes it so that the game will start up and go ahead and set this value to its default value. If you don't have this checked, and you go ahead and try to check the condition, then it won't respond to it. You have to set the condition to have a value at the start of the game using the update world state action. So we want this initialize if null so that at the start of the game this value is false, so we can check it right away. This large box is used to describe this condition, and you want to give a very specific description so that if someone comes along and they don't necessarily understand what your condition is from its name, that they can look here and get the information they need. This condition indicates if the player has looked at Slimo. It's true only after the player has looked at Slimo. Finally, we can add tags to this condition, which allows us to find it easily through our condition selection menu. Now, I could go ahead and select any of the tags we have, but I might want to go ahead and create new tags. This is useful if you're creating a whole bunch of conditions that revolve around a specific subject. In this case, I want to create one called Wiki Demo. I hit that plus button, and it'll go ahead and create the tag. After that, I can select Wiki Demo from this list. Once you've edited your condition and set it how you want it to, make sure to save it. This exclamation mark indicates that we haven't saved it yet. So I'll click that, and it'll go ahead and save my condition. Now our condition is ready to be used. I can go ahead and test this by going to our initial trigger, going ahead and adding a condition, and selecting our new condition from the Wiki Demo list. Then it adds it in with our default value as false. I'm going to leave this as is because what we want to do is we only want to trigger this sequence if Brick has not looked at Slimo. So this will still remain true. What we need to do now, though, is create a new sequence where that'll only happen when it's true. So I'm going to create a new trigger. Wiki demo look at Slimo again. Now I'm going to add a condition. I'm going to have Slimo go ahead and say a line. Well thought out, beautifully written line. Now I need to add some conditions to this. We need to make sure that the player performs the look action on Slimo. We want to ensure that we are within this current area, which is the PNC level 01. And finally, we want to make sure that this condition is true. Our new one that we created, the wiki demo brick has looked at Slimo. We'll go ahead and check this to true. But there's nothing that sets this true. So what we need to do is find out when we want to change this to true. In this case, we want to do it as soon as the player has looked at Slimo for the first time. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to add another condition here. I'm going to add it right at the beginning. And we're going to add an update world state. This allows us to change the current world state. Specifically, it allows us to modify exact conditions. When I select it, I have the ability to select from any of our list of conditions. I want to go to our brick has looked at Slimo one. And I can either toggle the value, which will change it from its state from false to true or true to false. But in this case, I want to just set it to true. Now, when we go ahead and perform this first action, it'll set this value to true. So the second time we go ahead and perform the command, it'll use our other trigger, which goes ahead and checks to make sure it's true. Let's go ahead and test this out. So we start off by looking at Slimo, and we have our initial interaction. And then when we perform it again, we can see that Slimo has reacted differently. If you want to double check the current world state, you can do so by going into the hierarchy, selecting world state, and going into the inspector. When you do, you'll see a specific component called the memory view, which allows you to see the current world state as is. We can see there's a couple of values here, including our current level and the condition that we made. To double check that that's getting set only after we perform the action, we can go ahead and try the game out from the beginning and watch the variables in real time. So when we start the game, our wiki demo brick has looked is equal to false. I go ahead and I look at Slimo, and after this action is performed, when we go in here and update the view by scrolling, we can see that the value has been set to true. I can go ahead and look at Slimo again and see that it's using that value. Now, for quick debugging purposes, you can use this window to edit values in real time. I can check that to be false, and then I can look at Slimo again and get our original trigger. This is convenient if you need to test a complicated situation quickly without having to stop the game and restart it again.